a Wikividi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Venezuela. Venezuela, officially the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, is a federal republic on the northern coast of South America, bordered by Colombia on the west, Brazil on the south, Guyana on the east, the Dutch Lesser Antilles to the north and Trinidad and Tobago to the northeast. Venezuela covers 916,445 sq.km and has over a million people. The country has extremely high biodiversity and is ranked 7th in the world's list of nations with the most number of species. There are habitats ranging from the Andes Mountains in the west to the Amazon Basin rainforest in the south via extensive Llanos Plains, the Caribbean coast and the Orinoco River Delta in the east. The territory now known as Venezuela was colonized by Spain in 1522 amid resistance from indigenous peoples. In 1811, it became one of the first Spanish-American territories to declare independence, which was not securely established until 1821, when Venezuela was a department of the Federal Republic of Gran Colombia. It gained full independence as a separate country in 1830. During the 19th century, Venezuela suffered political turmoil and autocracy, remaining dominated by regional caudillos until the mid-20th century. Since 1958, the country has had a series of democratic governments. Economic shocks in the 1980s and 1990s led to several political crises, including the deadly Caracazo riots of 1989, 2 attempted coups in 1992, and the impeachment of President Carlos Andrés Pérez for embezzlement of public funds in 1993. A collapse in confidence in the existing parties saw the 1998 election of former coup-involved career officer Hugo Chavez and the launch of the Bolivarian Revolution. The revolution began with a 1999 Constituent Assembly, where a new constitution of Venezuela was written. This new constitution officially changed the name of the country to República Bolivariana de Venezuela. Venezuela is a charter member of the UN, OS, USN, ALBA, Mercosur, LIA and OA. The country is a federal presidential republic consisting of 23 states, the capital district, and federal dependencies. Venezuela also claims all Guyanese territory west of the Essequibo River, a 159,500 square kilometers tract dubbed Guayana Essequiba or the Zona en Reclamation. Venezuela is among the most urbanized countries in Latin America. The vast majority of Venezuelans live in the cities of the north, especially in the capital, which is also the largest city in Venezuela. Oil was discovered in the early 20th century and, today, Venezuela has the world's largest known oil reserves and has been one of the world's leading exporters of oil. Previously, the country was an underdeveloped exporter of agricultural commodities such as coffee and cocoa, but oil quickly came to dominate exports and government revenues. The 1980s oil glut led to an external debt crisis and a long-running economic crisis. Inflation peaked at 100% in 1996 and poverty rates rose to 66% in 1995 as per capita GDP fell to the same level as 1963, down a third from its 1978 peak. The recovery of oil prices in the early 2000s gave Venezuela oil funds not seen since the 1980s. The Venezuelan government then established populist social welfare policies that initially boosting the Venezuelan economy and increased social spending, temporarily reducing economic inequality and poverty. However, such policies later became inadequate, as their excesses, including a uniquely extreme fossil fuel subsidy, are widely blamed for destabilizing the nation's economy. The destabilized economy led to a crisis in Bolivarian Venezuela, resulting in hyperinflation, an economic depression, shortages of basic goods, and drastic increases in unemployment, poverty, disease, child mortality, malnutrition, and crime. By late 2017, Venezuela was declared to be in default with debt payments by credit rating agencies. Etymology. According to the most popular and accepted version, in 1499, an expedition led by Alonso de Ojeda visited the Venezuelan coast. The stilt houses in the area of Lake Maracaibo reminded the navigator, Amerigo Vespucci, of the city of Venice, so he named the region Venezuela, or Little Venice. The Spanish version of Venezuela is Venezuela. Martín Fernández de Enciso, a member of the Vespucci and Ojeda crew, gave a different account. In his work Summa de Geografia, he states that the crew found indigenous people who called themselves the Venezuela. Thus, the name, Venezuela, may have evolved from the native word. Pre-Columbian history. Evidence exists of human habitation in the area now known as Venezuela from about 15,000 years ago. Leaf-shaped tools from this period, together with chopping and plano-convex scraping implements, have been found exposed on the high riverine terraces of the Rio Pedregal in western Venezuela. Late Pleistocene hunting artifacts, including spear tips, have been found at a similar series of sites in northwestern Venezuela known as El Jobo. According to radiocarbon dating, these date from 13,000 to 7,000 BC. It is not known how many people lived in Venezuela before the Spanish conquest. It has been estimated at around 1 million. In addition to indigenous peoples known today, the population included historical groups such as the Kalina, or Ake, Caquisio, Mariche, and Timotocuicas. The Timotocuica culture was the most complex society in pre-Columbian Venezuela, with pre-planned permanent villages, surrounded by irrigated, terraced fields. They also stored water in tanks. Their houses were made primarily of stone and wood with thatched roofs. They were peaceful, for the most part, and depended on growing crops. Regional crops included potatoes and alucos. They left behind works of art, particularly anthropomorphic ceramics, but no major monuments. They spun vegetable fibers to weave into textiles and mats for housing. They are credited with having invented the arepa, a staple in Venezuelan cuisine. After the conquest, the population dropped markedly, mainly through the spread of new infectious diseases from Europe. Two main north-south axes of pre-Columbian population were present, who cultivated maize in the west and manioc in the east. Large parts of the Llanos were cultivated through a combination of slash and burn, and permanent settled agriculture. Colonization. In 1498, during his third voyage to the Americas, Christopher Columbus sailed near the Orinoco Delta and landed in the Gulf of Paria. Amazed by the great offshore current of fresh water which deflected his course eastward, Columbus expressed in a letter to Isabella and Ferdinand that he must have reached heaven on earth. His certainty of having attained paradise made him name this region Land of Grace, a phrase that has become the country's nickname. Spain's colonization of mainland Venezuela started in 1522, establishing its first permanent South American settlement in the city of Cumaná. In the 16th century, Venezuela was contracted as a concession by the King of Spain to the German Welser-Bankingт family. Native caciques such as Guaicaipuro and Tamanaco attempted to resist Spanish incursions, but the newcomers ultimately subdued them. Tamanaco was put to death by order of Caracas founder, Diego de Losada. In the 16th century, during the Spanish colonization, indigenous peoples such as many of the Mariches, themselves descendants of the Kalina, converted to Roman Catholicism. Some of the resisting tribes or leaders are commemorated in place names, including Caracas, Chacao, and Los Teques. The early colonial settlements focused on the northern coast, but in the mid-18th century, the Spanish pushed farther inland along the Orinoco River. Here, the Yecuana organized serious resistance in 1775 and 1776. Spain's eastern Venezuelan settlements were incorporated into New Andalusia province, administered by the Royal Audiencia of Santo Domingo. From the early 16th century, most of Venezuela became part of the Viceroyalty of New Granada in the early 18th century, and was then reorganized as an autonomous captaincy general starting in 1777. The town of Caracas, founded in the central coastal region in 1567, was well placed to become a key location, being near the coastal port of La Guaira whilst itself being located in a valley in a mountain range, providing defensive strength against pirates and a more fertile and healthy climate. Independence and 19th century. After a series of unsuccessful uprisings, Venezuela, under the leadership of Francisco de Miranda, a Venezuelan marshal who had fought in the Revolution and the French Revolution, declared independence on July 5, 1811. This began the Venezuelan War of Independence, a devastating earthquake that struck Caracas in 1812, together with the rebellion of the Venezuelan Llaneros, helped bring down the First Venezuelan Republic. A Second Venezuelan Republic, proclaimed on August 7, 1813, lasted several months before being crushed, as well. Sovereignty was only attained after Simón Bolívar, aided by José Antonio Páez and Antonio José de Sucre, won the Battle of Carabobo on June 24, 1821. On July 24, 1823, José Prudencio Padilla and Rafael Urdaneta helped seal Venezuelan independence with their victory in the Battle of Lake Maracaibo. New Granada's Congress gave Bolívar control of the Grenadian army. Leading it, he liberated several countries and founded Gran Colombia. Sucre, who won many battles for Bolívar, went on to liberate Ecuador and later become the second president of Bolivia. Venezuela remained part of Gran Colombia until 1830, when a rebellion led by Páez allowed the proclamation of a newly independent Venezuela. Páez became the first president of the new republic. Between 1/4 and 1/3 of Venezuela's population was lost during these 2 decades of warfare, which by 1830 was estimated at about 800,000. The colors of the Venezuelan flag are yellow, blue, and red. The yellow stands for land wealth, the blue for the sea that separates Venezuela from Spain, and the red for the bloodshed by the heroes of independence. Slavery in Venezuela was abolished in 1854. Much of Venezuela's 19th-century history was characterized by political turmoil and dictatorial rule, including the independence leader José Antonio Páez, who gained the presidency 3 times and served a total of 11 years between 1830 and 1863. This culminated in the Federal War, a civil war in which hundreds of thousands died in a country with a population of not much more than 1 million people. In the latter half of the century, Antonio Guzmán Blanco, another caudillo, served a total of 13 years between 1870 and 1887, with 3 other presidents interspersed. In 1895, a long-standing dispute with Great Britain about the territory of Guayana Esequiba, which Britain claimed as part of British Guiana and Venezuela saw as Venezuelan territory, erupted into the Venezuela crisis of 1895. The dispute became a diplomatic crisis when Venezuela's lobbyist, William L. Scruggs, sought to argue that British behavior over the issue violated the United States Monroe Doctrine of 1823, and used his influence in Washington, D.C. to pursue the matter. Then, U.S. President Grover Cleveland adopted a broad interpretation of the doctrine that did not just simply forbid new European colonies, but declared an American interest in any matter within the hemisphere. Britain ultimately accepted arbitration, but in negotiations over its terms was able to persuade the U.S. on many of the details. A tribunal convened in Paris in 1898 to decide the issue, and in 1899 awarded the bulk of the disputed territory to British Guiana. In 1899, Cipriano Castro, assisted by his friend Juan Vicente Gómez, seized power in Caracas, marching an army from his base in the Andean state of Táchira. Castro defaulted on Venezuela's considerable foreign debts and declined to pay compensation to foreigners caught up in Venezuela's civil wars. This led to the Venezuela crisis of 1902-1903, in which Britain, Germany and Italy imposed naval blockade of several months before international arbitration at the new Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague was agreed. In 1908, another dispute broke out with the Netherlands, which was resolved when Castro left for medical treatment in Germany and was promptly overthrown by Juan Vicente Gómez. Brought to you by Wikividi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?